What is authoritarianism? Authoritarianism is a form of government in which the rulers demand unquestioning obedience from the ruled. In other words, authoritarianism, as a form of government, is characterized by the rejection of political plurality, the use of a strong central power to preserve the political status quo, and reductions in the rule of law, separation of powers, and democratic voting. Traditionally, authoritarians have argued for a high degree of determination by governments of belief and behavior, and a correspondingly smaller significance for individual choice. But it is possible to be authoritarian in some spheres while being more liberal in others. Frederick the Great is alleged to have said, "I have an agreement with my people, they can say what they like and I can do what I like." An authoritarian government, therefore, lacks free and competitive direct elections to legislatures, free and competitive direct or indirect elections for executives, or both. It is also important to note that authoritarian states include countries that lack civil liberties such as freedom of religion, or countries in which the government and the opposition do not alternate in power at least once following free elections. A number of American political scientists in the Cold War period distinguished between authoritarian and totalitarian governments. The former, which is mainly military regimes, had two advantages over the latter. They did not last as long and, though they could repress their political opponents as brutally as any known regimes, they left a larger sphere for private life. Totalitarian regimes, on the other hand, were, in this context, invariably communist. Thus, where conditions were not yet ripe for democracy, there were relative advantages to authoritarianism. As we can see, in authoritarianism, there is the principle of blind submission to authority, as opposed to individual freedom of thought and action. Hence, authoritarian leaders often exercise power arbitrarily and without regard to existing bodies of law, and they usually cannot be replaced by citizens choosing freely among various competitors in elections. The freedom to create opposition political parties, or other alternative political groupings, with which to compete for power with the ruling group, is either limited or non-existent in authoritarian regimes. Authoritarianism thus stands in fundamental contrast to democracy. It also differs from totalitarianism, however, since authoritarian governments usually have no highly developed guiding ideology, tolerate some pluralism in social organization, lack the power to mobilize the entire population in pursuit of national goals, and exercise power within relatively predictable limits. Examples of authoritarian regimes, according to some scholars, include the pro-Western military dictatorships that existed in Latin America and elsewhere in the second half of the 20th century.